All right, let's go ahead and get this regular Assembly Committee on Homelessness to order. We'll go ahead and start with introductions, starting with Ms. Rose.
Nikki Rose. I'm from the Federation of Community Councils.
Felix Rivera.
Forrest Dunbar.
Ira Perman.
Duke Ray.
Nancy Burke with the administration.
Jack Carson, Anchor Place.
Joey Keegan, English Parks and Rec.
All right. And normally I would do go through the audience and do introductions, but because we have a lot to discuss in this meeting, I just want us to get to the business. So we'll go ahead and start with the Mayor's Housing and Homeless Services Coordination update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the update today, I just wanted to provide some information regarding the Anchorage Community Plan to End Homelessness Strategic Plan update. We have with us today some representatives from the coalition, including Jasmine Khan, the executive director, who is behind me. And we have a team of people who are beginning to work on this plan together, and there will be an announcement next Thursday regarding some of the new materials that are coming out and announcement of some additional resources to help us implement a broader strategic community action plan. So please look for that announcement. It'll be on August 23rd. Following that, we will begin engaging the community in a public input process that will last approximately a month and some weeks, and then we will be finalizing the strategic action plan with specific outcome measures and details that will then be able to come back to this committee and other bodies to review and understand and incorporate feedback for that. So we're very excited about that process. It brings a lot of different people to the table and in this work and trying to coordinate all of the resources in the community. And I personally am very pleased to have our team kind of broadened in working to support the municipalities' needs and others in the community. The next update is the Alaska Center for Treatment. We will probably have some items relating to the property for the rebuild of our treatment facility located on West End Road out near Point Warrenzoff. We are moving forward in looking at the zoning for that particular parcel and what may need to happen to accommodate the rebuild of the treatment services on that site. So you'll probably see some materials coming to you through the regular assembly process on that. Next week we'll have our consultant. Stephanie Colston is a national expert in assisting communities in looking at the mix of treatment services that can be effective and can support the work that's going on in the community. And so she and myself and a few other people will be walking around and talking with some of the ideas of the types of services we think would bolster the community's resources at that location, starting with our substance abuse treatment partners, and then broadening out to some other stakeholders, including hospitals and our own Anchorage Health Department. Following that, we will begin to start testing the feasibility or the finance behind the scenarios that we've developed. And we'll be able to get to the question that's frequently been asked in this committee and others: what will it cost? What's the scope of what we're doing? We'll be able to perhaps even get you some conceptual 10% drawings on the property and what we plan to do there. Very excited about that project. The other things rolling through, the mobile intervention team continues to work with the police department and with the community around providing needed resources for people with high behavioral health needs in our downtown area. We're also looking at other areas across town where we see areas of concern and trying to figure out how we can get people to great resources so that they can get connected back into housing and to stability. The mobile intervention team continues to do camp outreach and is engaged in the process that we'll be talking about today, providing mental health assistance to people out in the community and we remain pretty excited about the use of that team and the reductions that we're seeing in calls. Again, we think that calls are down 40% from January. We'll be doing some additional technical assistance with the teams that are down at the homeless campus with Brother Francis Shelter and Beans Cafe, in visiting with other shelters that perform mental health services and are engaged with people with high behavioral health needs. And so we'll look for some additional resources and ideas coming out of that next batch of technical assistance. We'll be doing that in September with a visit to DESC to view their mobile intervention team, as well as their crisis stabilization center that is a resource for them in their continuum as well. The Pay for Success program, some of you, if you came in early, you might have noticed there were a lot of people in this room. We had about 50 people this morning who are potential outcome payers for the Pay for Success program. We met and we started to begin discussing what would the outcomes be on a project that targets people with the highest needs in our system. And just a quick reminder that the Pay for Success project is actually a permanent supported housing demonstration program. It'll target 270 people over the next 3 years. These are folks who have a history of cycling through the Department of Corrections, through homelessness, and also through high medical care centers. So that population is one that is certainly in the mix for us when we talk about emergency calls to our homeless campus and a number of locations around the community, and we're very pleased to be at the place where we're talking with potential funders on the Pay for Success program. I believe that's the end of my update report. The main topic on the agenda today is one to discuss the camp outreach and abatement process, and one of the things that we've been working with internally is how we can organize the data that comes in and the activities that are performed across 3 different municipal departments, how we can make that easily digestible for the community, how we can provide information back about what we're able to do and what we're quite frankly not able to do in terms of cleanup of camps. And so we do have this beginning of a story map. A story map is something that we're able to use through the GIS server. It allows us to incorporate narrative and pictures, and it brings in data in a way that's easily digestible for the public and for users who aren't familiar with the programming that's behind the GIS system. And it allows a very attractive way to tell a basic story. So today we'll have Parks and Rec walk us through the story map, and Taylor and I will be kind of tag teaming along with Lieutenant Carson to describe the different parts where municipal agencies are engaged in this process, and to hopefully provide a visual that will be helpful for the community to see what's happening.
Sure. We have a question from Ms. LaFrance before we move on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Apologies for coming in late. Nancy, you had mentioned something about doing public outreach or having public meetings. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about that? And I'm sorry I missed the context of it, but what that will take and what kind of involvement with the public?
Oh, that's Jasmine.
Hi. So I think as we've been sharing in a number of different venues, our intent with the new strategic action plan is to make it a community plan. That requires additional community input, though I know there have been gatherings dating back to the beginning of the year. So our goal is, now that we have a public review draft, is to set up meetings with, generally speaking, 4 groups of people. One of those groups would be municipality organizations, state organizations that will be impacted by the plan, think APD, the fire department, et cetera, Parks and Recs. One group would be folks that are impacted by the plan in terms of housing and support service providers, so people that we will really need to engage to take these actions and to participate in the work at hand. A third group is the broad community, hopefully folks that haven't been involved to date but have read ADN and have experienced different things, and have a large evening community gathering to allow input. And then the fourth kind of general bucket are looking at assembly meetings that are coming up, community council meetings that are coming up, really targeting the areas that have been vocal about being impacted. Those would be the large audiences, but we've also had ongoing communications with really particular community groups, a number of grassroots groups, and we're going to go ahead and meet those folks just in smaller conversations, just to hear that direct feedback and make sure that there's two-sided conversation. Now, our timeline is limited because we need to get the plan done by October 4th. So we're really looking at starting next week or the week after next and running through the end of September. So it is less time than one would normally hope for to do public engagement at this scale. But the offer is open. If there are groups or community gatherings where folks feel like we should show up and talk about the plan, more than happy to do that, but that's the plan at this moment in time. Thank you.
Just a quick follow-up question, sir.
Actually, first, did you have anything further, Ms. LaFrance?
No, just thank you is the question, but Mr. Constant.
Okay, sure, Mr. Constant.
Do we have a copy of the public review draft? Is that this that's here, or is there some other document that's been released?
It will be available August 23rd. It's still being refined, and it's in its last drafting.
All right, thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Trainee.
We have that sent to us electronically also.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. All right. Looks like we don't have any further questions. Let the record reflect that Mr. Weddleton has joined us. Okay, Ms. Burke, we are ready for your presentation.
So, hi, once again, my name is Taylor. I'm a park planner with Parks and Recreation, and I am the math lady in the department, so that's why I'm here. I was asked to create a story map that helps to compile the information involving the cleanup of camps, with the visual supplement to what folks would might be doing, as well as the efforts with outreach. So here, these are some specific zones we've been working on. As more zones are cleared, there will be more added to the map. But also, please note this is a work in progress. So the first few zones are complete, but as we move further down the map, the information is incomplete for the Great. So, zooming, the first zone here, we have 3rd and Ingress. So, and I'm sure you saw me fiddling around with the size here. When you view this on your desktop, it'll be a little bit easier to read. But here we have a before and after photo. We have the posting dates, the dates cleaned, which was April through June, when there was outreach. So you can see there were 2 dates there, the number of pounds removed and the number of hours dedicated to the cleanup. Here we have Valley of the Moon. The same information is there, as you can see. Moving forward, Charles Smith Memorial Park. We've broken the green belt into these different manageable areas. Chester Creek Sports Complex. East Chester Park. North Russian Jack Springs Park. South Russian Jack Springs Park. And then here we have an overview. So you can see there is a breakdown. The colors correlate to the years that the cleanup happened, and the numbers on the screen are the tons removed by month. So please note that the 2018 is just that yellow block, the 2017 is the gray, the 2016, so on and so forth, so you can get an idea of the compare across the years. I'll pass it back to Nancy for any other information about the map.
So, Mr. Chair, we think that this may be a helpful resource. I would like to say it's still in development. Taylor's done a really nice job of helping place visuals with the areas. There's additional work going on to figure out how we can enact the zone ordinance that was passed. There's some legal and background work we need to do prior to that. But we hope that this will be, something similar to how community members can go to the snowplow map and find out, what's happening, where's the group. that we can use this as a way to inform the public about the areas we're working in. I think this feels like a good format, a good platform for us to improve upon. We're definitely feeling this is a base, and that will add information to it as needed.
Thank you, Ms. LaFrance. Mr. Perman.
Thanks. Very nice presentation. The question I get the most is where's the cleanup going to happen next, or when will my neighborhood get cleaned up? Is that going to be part of this as well?
I think that's the vision, that we can then, we can show, we can advance forward. This is the first year that we've gone from a more responsive model of, cleaning sites in different locations every day to focusing on just these colored blocks. We're not doing the zone process yet. As we get better organized and figure the timing between when notifications happen and when the cleanups happen, as we get more coordinated together, we will be able to more reliably predict where we'll be going next. So, yes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Perman. Mr. Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And so is the camp cleanup still ongoing 6 days a week?
Yes.
And we have, how many personnel we have involved continuing to do that?
I'm going to ask for a lifeline.
Currently, we have 10 people consistently in the field. We have a shift a little bit on Monday with a few less, just because we're overlapping shifts, and then also on Saturday a few less. So it is a full 6 days.
All right, great, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Peterson. All right. Take it away, Ms. Burke.
I think that the next piece I'd just like to highlight before we maybe go into the conversation about some suggested improvements for this process is the resources and the timing of when the resources are available has been a challenge, and we've introduced an additional person in the process, Rosa Salazar. She's really coordinating between the cleanup crews that are doing the work and the needed resources to help make sure that they have a clear path about where they're going next and how we all stay together in this process. The police initiate it. They do the legal notification part. The police schedule is, they have priorities, and this is one of their responsibilities. So timing their resource along with the notification period and then the cleanup resource, and making sure that people who are in the camps understand that when we post, we're coming, and that we will come in a window of time. It's not going to be exactly 10 days, every time, because of this scheduling that needs to happen between the police and then the outreach is what happens in the middle, and that's the part that the mobile intervention team and the work of coordinating the outreach resources in the community, that piece is being bolstered, and then the cleanup. So I want to underscore that it seems simple to just post the notice, wait the 10 days, and then come clean up. But there are a lot of resources that have to be tied together in this process, and it's an important commitment that we have from my office and shared with the health department and the social service providers, that we get the engagement piece happening in those 10 days. That is an opportunity for engagement. People are motivated. They understand the changes coming. And that's a very good opportunity to engage them with social services.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Burke. We have a question, Mr. Constant.
Thanks. All looks really good. My question is on the dates clean idea. Are we going to be able to narrow that a little bit when we get closer, so that we have kind of a time specific this week, that week, as opposed to over the range of 3 months?
Oh, I believe that. Yes, yes, we absolutely will get that better.
Yeah, because that's, I think, one of the key points the community's been asking for, is kind of figuring out when the posting happens and when the cleanup is done. I totally agree. The timeline doesn't ever going to hit 10 days exactly. It has to be reasonably within that time frame. Otherwise, the legal argument that can be made that we have to repost it.
Yes.
And so I think that's careful enough. Mr. Chair, I just have the need to declare what might be perceived as a conflict. And so I've been to the ethics board on this question. I do real estate, and Taylor is actually a real estate client of mine, and we're engaged in a contract right now. And so the level at which the discussion with the ethics board landed was if I have supervisorial confirmatory authority over the individual, then it's a conflict. But in this case, it's just worth putting on the record so that when someone sees my financial disclosures at the end of the year, there isn't a question. So.
Thank you for declaring it's the ruling of the chair that you don't have a conflict.
May I respond to the first question?
Sure, and then I'll go to my other colleagues.
One of the reasons that it does say April through June is that this map will reflect the, I call it popcorn approach that we have to take until we begin operating in the zone mechanism. So probably cleanup activities happen in those, but there were specific weeks that we can call out for the community that we will be concentrating on this area.
That's super helpful.
And it'll be a tool. We don't have to do a zone cleanup for every area around town. We can still maintain just kind of an area focus, and we can also maintain one-off, what we're calling area of concern. So if something pops up by a school right now, we're paying attention to schools. We can be responsive to camps as long as we follow the legal procedure for each of those types of approach.
All right. Ms. LaFrance, then Mr. Trainee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Nancy, for a frame of reference, how many illegal camps do we have right now? And is the map and the system used for tracking that number? And if not, how are we measuring and monitoring the number of camps and which ones are evaded?
Any question? I have the camp counts here. In 2016, I'll give you the numbers and then I want to just give the caveat about how this data is. In 2016, there were 177 camps that were noticed and processed through this system. In 2017, there were 414. And in 2018, to date, there's 444. Those numbers are increasing, and we saw the tonnage that's being removed, and it's a reflection of, well, we can't really say, but the system has been coming up to speed, and so we've been getting better at marking camps and tracking them in the system, and tracking I think the Parks Department has always done a great job of tracking the amount of materials that come out. That's a pretty concrete number that can be tracked, but how those relate to how many camps, how many persons were in those camps, that information is not integrated in the system. So we have these sort of different data points around that we're trying to, in fact, use this story map to pull together. So we're getting better at the process. We're clearing more, going to a focused area approach has allowed us to be more efficient. We've cleared the backlog of some camps that have been there for probably several seasons. And so the numbers we're seeing won't stabilize until a few more years. Once the data system is more robust, our processes match the reporting, and the overall process is stabilized.
Okay, thank you. A quick follow-up.
Sure.
In those numbers, can we assume that those are repeats? That, like for 444 to date, how many of those might be the same camp that has relocated and moved?
We don't have that information. What we will have is a balancing point, and one of the reasons from the social service side, we've been trying to conduct a point-in-time count, a once-a-year count. Actually, we're now making it a 2 times a year count. We can begin to look at the data on how many people we encounter out in the community, and then looking at the number of camps, and we can begin to analyze that way.
All right. So last 3, and then I really do want to make sure we have enough time to have the community discussion. So Mr. Trainee, Mr. Gates, then Mr. Constant.
Mr. Rada, how much, the tonnage you're taking up, you're cleaning up, is that going to the transfer station or to the landfill itself? Because they're shutting the transfer station down. Have you guys planned for that eventuality?
Yes. We go to the transfer station. or we use solid waste services. They assist them by providing dumpsters at primary locations when we have can cleanup. And prepare during the interim period of the 14th yesterday through the 3rd of September to either do the same or take our larger vehicle dump truck, load that up and take it out to the landfill.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Mr. Gates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to speak to a procedural matter. I guess Mr. Constant said he has a potential conflict on this matter. I didn't hear a ruling from the chair on that. And was there one?
Yes.
I'm sorry if I missed it. Thanks.
No problem. Mr. Constant.
So I'm not suggesting you go there now because it looks like where you're working is where we need to be working, but it seems like once we get to the point where the by name list is functioning and everyone's kind of in the HMIS and we're doing interventions at the campsites, then we probably will at some point be able to determine if people are moving from point A to point B only, right? So I think that's on the dashboard in the future, an area to be thinking along the lines of kind of making that intervention point at a regular point in time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Constant. All right, we can go ahead and move on to the meat of the meeting. So if we can have our community members join us at the table, whichever are the designated leads. So I don't know if Ms. Rhodes, you want to come up, and then Mr. Webb.
I'm a little confused because we had communicated with you, Mr. Rivera, and asked for an agenda for now over a week. And we had specifically asked whether to prepare for discussion, which had been, suggested that you would take it up. We received nothing from you, from anyone. The agenda didn't appear until last night. There's nothing on it about the 12-point plan. No one's communicated to us that we were to address it today. There are substantial issues in there that have to do with legal suggestions about changes to ordinances. And we received the agenda when it was posted, and there's nothing on it about anything for community participation. So I'm sorry to say that at least I did not prepare to present to a board of your ilk today. And so I'm a little confused about what the public hearing process is of this group. I'm a little confused about what open meetings notice you have to give, when you have to give them, if you're going to invite community members to take time out of their lives to actually study and prepare documents for your use, actual use, real use, and not just give you our thoughts about what's going on in the world today, which we've done before, then it would seem to me that we need to have personal notice that we are expected to take the time to review the things of import and to make real suggestions. At least that's my position. If there are other members of the community that wish to speak to anything that you'd like to hear, because I'm not sure what you'd like to hear. You just invited us up, so I don't know what you want to hear. But please make that invitation.
Sure. So I did have an outline for how I was hoping this discussion would occur. And my apologies if it wasn't made clear that at this meeting we would be discussing this. I will go to you in a second. So I'll go ahead and just walk through the outline, and then if it's something that you believe you're able to participate in, then I'd like us to have the discussion. And if not, then we can move forward from there.
So let me apologize. I'm not sure what outline you're referring to.
I'm about to walk through it right now of how I was hoping that this discussion would happen. So first and foremost, I wanted to start the discussion off with sort of a highlight of outcomes, which I believe that you had done a couple of meetings ago when you initially presented this. Wanted to rehash what some of those outcomes might be from the community, and then get sort of the administration's and the Assembly's perspective on what the outcomes we want from this discussion. Second is, since the community came forward with this discussion, I wanted to start and end the discussion on each of these items with the community. So start off with getting the community's overview of each of these points and why it is being brought up. Then I believe the administration has responses to these points, bring it up for the committee to ask clarifying questions, and then for the community to end with any final comments or questions. And after we get through all of these 12, if there are any lingering questions of, hey, we didn't really talk so much about 6 as much as I thought we should have, or we don't have resolution on number 8, then figure out how we want to move forward with that discussion. So that's how I was hoping that this discussion would be held today. Sure, I'll go to you then, Mr. Constant.
Okay, first off, this is typical of this body, not all of you, but Mr. Rivera, Nancy Burke, the mayor, not including, not responding to the community. We have been here at every meeting for over a year. And it's like you just flick us off. And I think that this, we're going to discuss it now, the next 30 minutes, is insulting. You're not doing your job, Mr. Rivera. And I'm in the district that votes who goes in there. And I feel that this is just typical. We have been excluded. Oh yeah, we've been allowed to have a couple people speak, but these people spoke several weeks ago. We asked for this to be on the agenda. And what happened? It was decided, no, we can't discuss it then. We're going to push it back one more month. And now you're asking us to discuss this? This is insulting. This is not how government should work. I am totally discouraged. Totally discouraged. And I am ashamed of my government. I'm ashamed of the mayor, ashamed of what's happening with this whole homeless issue. Part of the reason why these dates are so ridiculous is because this body, the Anchorage Assembly, or the mayor, or whoever, has not funded the effort in a way that would make a difference. John just told us, we have 10 people, sorta. There were supposed to be 15 people available to clean up these encampments. But no, that isn't what happened. I've been lied to. We've been lied to. And I don't know what to do about it. You talk to other people, we're discouraged. And we're madder than hell. And I told today Lieutenant Carson to put up the barriers, because this is going nowhere. You people are not doing the job that needs to be done. You are not taking care of the citizens who are paying for everything. And I'm sick of it.
Well, there's one highlighted outcomes, but let me just say that with respect to, if you're talking about an overview of each point, if you are actually referring to the 12-point plan that my husband suggested be discussed, and just to make the record clear, it was supposed to be discussed at an earlier meeting, and Nancy and I spoke, and we did agree that you would bump that. However, the purpose of that was so that we would get some conversation time between then and now, so that we could find out exactly what you're trying to advance here, which is the administration's response to it, and so that we could have an actual discussion with you all about where we were in accord, where we could meaningfully move forward together, where we could actually have participation and help. Those things did not occur. We actually did ask Nancy what the administration's position was on the 12-point plan in preparation of this meeting. We heard nothing. We then heard nothing about it being on the agenda. No one's ever contacted us personally and asked us to prepare to discuss anything today. So if you just want to have people stand up and hurl the same stuff at you that we've done in previous meetings, which we prepared for as well, I suppose we could do that, but I see no productivity to it.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Mr.
you.
Constant. Thank you.
I would like to propose that we convene a special meeting of the committee, and I'm not sure, I know there's some travel dates in September, but I think the first week of September, and you're not here then. So looking at the calendar then, that gives us either next week, the following week, the week of the 29th, and I don't see anything on the calendar on the 29th. And so my hope is that we can right now come to accord on the date and time for a meeting to discuss the 12 points and then move forward. Are you guys available that week, the 29th?
The whole week.
No, the day is the 29th.
That you-
The day is the 29th, it's Wednesday, same time.
We have an ethics and election committee meeting on that day,
Noon.
at noon. We could just scroll.
We'll find it, if that day works, great.
22nd also, I think we have a work session that was canceled on the CWA. Dick, are we going forward with the work session on the CWA, or is that been pushed off till?
No, we're going forward with that.
I think an hour may not be enough. I think an hour and a half is actually the proper amount of
Just
time
waiting for us to work
to
it out.
begin the conversation. I wouldn't want it sandwiched in between too many elements that we can't actually get to a meaningful level of conversation.
Right.
At the moment, I believe the whole afternoon of the 22nd is open.
Does the 22nd work, Russ?
22nd works.
Okay.
Be gone.
Oh yeah, you'll be gone for AML.
What about the next week? Really, the 29th is looking like the best day for me, and probably most of us are here then. 'Cause we
I'm
have
not
a meeting.
available the 29th.
You're not.
I serve on 3 other boards.
How about the 30th?
30th I can do.
So we have a meeting until 10:30, Community and Economic Development Committee, and then after that, we could do, might be a bit of a hustle to get here, or maybe we won't meet that day, it's just standing on my calendar. 11 o'clock on that day, the 30th.
Yeah, if that works for the community.
My recommendation would be start at 11:30 because it always takes a while to get over here from
So
the
11:30 to
permit
1
center.
on the 30th. And we'll make sure that the 12-point plan is published.
Yes.
And hopefully there's some meeting between folks to get to that point of the conversation where we're prepared comfortably to discuss the meat of the subject.
Well, perhaps today we could hear the administration's response.
Felix?
They were prepared to give it.
Sure. So I have Mr. Trainee, then Mr. Whittleton.
I would like the response from the administration on each one of the 12 points.
Um,
So these people know what the administration's
Okay.
position is, not the day before we have the meeting, but a couple days before the meeting, so they have time to look at the response, digest it.
I believe they already have an opinion on
No, but I want it ready for that.
Sooner the better.
Right. Sure. So, Mr. Whittleton.
Well, thanks. I mean, I heard the phrase "start the conversation," but these 12 points have been around for months and months. I think the conversation has started, and I've gone through them and go, "Oh gosh, we're doing a lot of these to at least some extent." And I mean, if you're ready to present, let's do it now. I mean, you're ready to go through these point by point and say, "Here's where we are on these," and so on. Why wait? And then we can follow up at another meeting. It's fine, but I'm here to find out where we are on this stuff.
Yeah, we have some responses to it. I have people here with us.
Can we get copies made for the public
this-
to have?
Yeah.
Do we all have extra copies?
They're on the table. Looks like.
We're going to talk about this on the other topic.
Sounds like an AA meeting or something.
And it would be helpful for the administration to follow it right
No, I'm not officially on this committee. But I don't think I'm missing any meeting.
I did not see it posted.
So this is the.
Okay.
We were invited.
We're invited,
No,
Well,
we'll
let's
come to the one
hear
we're
from the
invited to.
admin.
Thank you.
As a preliminary to a deeper conversation, indeed there are things that are being worked on this, and moving forward. There are some things that require more legal research and evaluation, and I know that the administration legal and perhaps even assembly legal are in discussions on a few pieces of these, so I won't be able to respond definitively to the ultimate position of the administration, but I can give an idea of where we are. So the first item is to add a public health and safety component to the 2018 Strategic Action Plan of the Anchorage Community Plan to End Homelessness and all future such plans. And this item has been in the works. If you recall, when we reviewed all of the community plans that covered Anchorage from the beginning of my work with this body and with the administration, it was very clear that there was a public safety, a police, a neighborhood gap in activities and funding resources coming into the community. And so the work of establishing the mobile intervention team has been a component of addressing the fact that the mental health response in our community isn't meeting the needs of the neighborhoods and businesses. And this point provided the opportunity to make that an actual pillar, if you will, or one of the focuses in the Anchorage Community Plan to End Homelessness, which we thought was a great idea. And Jasmine's been working on that in her work to update the Strategic Action Plan. It formalizes it, it makes it go beyond any of us sitting in this room, and we think that's a really strong recommendation. The second item is to clearly post existing code prohibitions against camping on public lands to enable swift abatement of camps occurring in the posted areas. We think that more posting is certainly a strategy that can be used, perhaps even in some of the areas that will apply the zone cleaning to, some of those high volume areas. However, the expense would have to be balanced with signage and increasing posting around prohibitions for camping in the community. And I have a couple of other reference documents I want to refer to. This also begins to tie into the processes that may come into place if someone is camping and we're required to abate more quickly. We would have to have storage available as an option. And storage is kind of a theme that's been coming up that needs additional work and of course budget recommendations if we're going to go that direction. The hire or assign a Parks and Recreation Code enforcement officer to continuously monitor public spaces to identify legal camps. This is certainly something that Parks and Rec, I'm sure, will want to think about as we go forward. The entity that we're using this year is not an enforcement officer, but there is someone who's now in the middle of all of the processes that happen between police, parks, and the social service arena. And that would fulfill some of the functions that are defined here, but not all. We're pleased to sort of test a portion of this one to see if that's the direction that Parks and Rec would want to go in the future. The next one, number 4, is to expand the mobile intervention team to 7 days a week so illegal camps can be noticed quickly and entrenched encampments cannot be developed. We believe that while this is an important part of it, it is the middle of the abatement process. It's the activity that happens in the middle, and certainly a lot of the people need that kind of, if not mental health engagement, an approach that's effective with people who are in the middle of substance use issues, and more technical resources in the middle of that process are definitely needed. 7 days a week. We only clean 6 days a week, so moving this team to 7 days a week may meet some other community goals, but perhaps not this goal. And so we would maybe suggest modifying this consideration to 6 days a week, and this would be certainly something interesting to continue looking at. However, budget recommendations, there's no new money for the mobile intervention team, so we would be limited by resources here. Number 5, to amend municipal code to allow more efficient zone notices in areas of illegal camp concentrations, rather than requiring individual notices on each tent and camp. This is done, this is covered in the new zone process, and so we are working on the back end of this process to see how we can enact this one. Number 6, amend municipal code to more narrowly define personal property of illegal campers in accord with court guidance to exclude items which deter camp abatement. For instance, generators, collection of propane tanks, etc. Initial review by legal indicates that you can't reduce the property, the rights of people in terms of property that they have with them. You can enact other methods for perhaps implementing a 72-hour abatement if there are of items of public concern or public safety concern. However, that would also be tied back to the storage. You would be required to conduct storage of those items and personal belongings and effects, and so this would tie back into the consideration of looking at storage. Number 7, amend municipal code to allow utilization of cold weather shelter alternatives year-round to assure alternative housing is available for campers displaced by camp abatements, and fund more shelter beds if needed. We agree this is a good idea. This has been enacted. We have a year-round sunsetting ordinance in place right now that allows for overflow shelter through next summer. And so that may be something as we balance the number of units of housing coming online. We can, as the units of housing come online and the availability of shelter beds is ensured, we can begin to use more tools to motivate people to get to those resources, including a tighter camp abatement process. If we have storage, we can do a number of different things to move this system forward. The reason we've not been able to have overflow shelter for the year-round for the last 2 years is simply financial. We don't have enough money to operate it. So we think number 7 is a good idea, and we're supportive of that. Number 8, amend municipal code to allow confiscation of materials used for illegal fires in illegal camps in public spaces, and to allow immediate abatement of camps violating fire codes as public safety risks. We understand there may be some examination of this code, perhaps through Dean's office, and this item would be of interest but needs more legal research. Number 9, enforce existing code prohibitions on open burns and use of cooking appliances and fuels such as propane, stove, grills, wood stoves outside of designated areas. This is a question of how you would enforce, how you would monitor as we know from looking at the map, there's a pretty broad expanse in the municipality of Anchorage, so enforcement would be an issue here, and this also would require more legal review in terms of the items that would be not allowed. Not allowed. Okay, so number 10, develop an economical and efficient means of storing personal property of campers. There's some suggestions here of how that might happen so that the municipality may enact the 72-hour notice. This is a good idea, in fact, one that we're pursuing. We're looking for ways to store belongings because that is tied to the zone abatement ordinance. We are looking to pilot this year, and so we're playing with some ideas on how this would happen, and in fact, it'll just give us an opportunity to do a small a small pilot and to figure out some more details on this. So this is a good idea. We are actively working towards this. Number 11, begin immediately publishing routine and complete reports on all illegal camps identified and actions taken to remove them, including when they were identified, noticed, abated, and cleaned. So municipal actions are transparent and accountable to citizens, make the datables searchable online by citizens. This is a resource question, and this is also a question of how to strike this balance that's sort of been in our conversations going on of attempting to get information that's more live out to the public, or to and how to balance the ability of the mental health workers to go out and be effective with people so that they know that they're not potentially going to be identified in the community or feel threatened in any way. It's a balance that needs to continue with more discussion. I know there's strong opinions on both sides. We need to have a healthy discussion about this. But we also need to follow the legal rule of what guides this. And so this, I recommend this for additional legal review and input. I also, we are looking at ways, as you saw, reporting out on the activities that happen by season. We believe it's a good idea, and that we should provide a report once we feel that the data is accurate enough in our system, that we can give the community real numbers of how many camps were approached and how many camps were abated in a season. We feel that an annual report is something that would be doable, and that we'll be working on for this season. The last one is to establish a comprehensive plan for removing low bush, particularly invasive species, along our trail system, to create a more open understory and better lines of sight in the green spaces, and make encampments harder to hide. We believe this is a great idea. The Parks and Recreation Department has hosted a number of events this year, and we feel that providing not only opportunity for the public to have a structured volunteer system to conduct these activities, but perhaps also to look at how the public may assist in trash garbage pickup and cleaning with proper training and procedures in place. We think this is a good idea. We've tried to bite off some of this season, and haven't actually been able to launch that volunteer portion of it, but we're moving it forward for next season for certain. And there's the 12 points.
Okay.
Did Mr. Trini receive a commitment that we get that in writing so that we can prepare for the 22nd? It would be very helpful to have that by end of week this week, so that we can actually digest all of that and make counter suggestions.
One point of clarification, did we say the 22nd or the 29th?
30th.
I'm sorry, the 30th.
30th, yes.
Within a reasonable time frame prior to that. Is that
And
commitment?
then, yes, I just want to clarify, we did get that commitment, Ms. Burke. Okay, I have just a couple further clarifications, then I'll get to the queue. Miss Sleppy, I just want to make sure that we are able to notify the meeting on the 30th, and that we'll have the administration's response as a handout available on our website. Perfect, that would be helpful. Okay, so Mr. Trainee, then Mr. Constant.
When
So,
the
sure.
administration gets the response, I want like a copy be emailed to every assembly member in this committee, so we know ahead of time their position on this. So we can come in here and don't have to read it, we'll know it automatically, okay?
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. We can do that. Go ahead.
Yes, I just wanted to correct one thing. Parks and Rec did not host the brush cleaning and trimming up the trees. This was initiated by citizens, local citizens. We did work with them. We found them very responsive and interested. We worked as partners, but it came from the citizens first. That's an important distinction. That's how it can work.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Constant.
I just want to underscore what Nancy spoke about in the issue of developing a pilot for storage. It's linchpin to several items of interest and drive to make things better. And it's a really kind of difficult thing to wrap one's mind around how it would work. There are methods that are implemented in other communities, but we have to start it in a sensible and meaningful and methodical way so that we get it right and don't create additional problems along the way. But at least 3 or 4 of these items are completely, they hinge upon the development of that service. And so I have been driving the municipality, the mayor's team, to identify a location and let's figure that out. And once we do that, that does allow for a briefer turnaround for abatements in certain areas and also for a more humane process for the individuals who are going through that kind of experience. And so that is, I think, the cutting edge of where we're developing, other than the data piece that has to continue to develop. So thank you for the effort, Nancy.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Constant. Mr. Dunbar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a level of specificity in my questions that I'm not sure is appropriate for this particular meeting. Maybe it should wait until after. But it sounds like, so I was trying to keep track. It sounds like you've accepted 4 of these points, and there's something like 6 or 7 others that you're working on, and maybe only a couple that you have said you probably can't do it because of legal review. But I do kind of want to drill down. I'll just ask the questions, and then if you can't provide the answers now, we'll wait for next time. But number 6 is one that stood out to me. Is there was sort of a discrepancy. You said that our legal team said that, and I agree that we can't mandate what is and is not personal property based on our own code, but the citizens are asserting that there is already court guidance that sort of creates a certain section of things or a category of things that are personal property, and there are perhaps things that we can define outside of what the court has stated must be. Is that the case or not the case? And if so, what's the discrepancy between what the citizens are saying and what our attorneys are saying exactly? Is Ms. Wynn Pearson here? I don't know.
She's unavailable. In conversations with her, she thought maybe Dean could comment more specifically on what the current listing code is. We believe the code is called directly from case law. I am certainly not an attorney, but the thought is that you can't legally write certain types of valuable personal property out of the definition of personal property simply because you don't like it or it's inconvenient.
So I guess it's a question for you then, Dean. Is there a set of jurisprudence or precedent on what is and is not personal property, legally speaking?
I'm not really prepared to answer that very well. I will try a rather rough response. This pen is personal property, really listed in code.
Right.
So, what's personal property, what should be taken or not, it's really difficult to define precisely.
Right.
We have it listed in code. It's supposed to be helpful guidance. It was taken from, and I drafted that list. It's taken from code from Washington, D.C. and not really based on, I think, a list that a court said this is personal property, this is not.
Yeah.
This what's personal property not becomes an issue can be litigated. Our list, I think, and like Nancy said, number 6, narrowly defining personal property isn't like a magical solution. The court's not going to look at our definition and say, yes, that's personal property. They're going to look at, I guess, an analysis of what is, what isn't, and whether it was improperly taken as property.
Can I ask a
So
quick
I
follow-up?
guess that's the best reference.
Sure, and it looks like Ms. Rhodes has something.
So is there a way to define well, so you're right, basically everything we have on our person is personal property or in our possession. On the other hand, the government does take things sometimes when they are dangerous or illegal. You can take food at the airport, for example. You can take a pocket knife in certain cases. I mean, is there going to be sort of a weighing of the the government's interest in that, or is there a blanket, everything is personal property?
We do have those exceptions in our code now. You know, the police can take weapons and evidence of crime, things like that. So they do it.
But they have to store it. I mean, I guess that's
public safety.
Right.
That's not going to get stored.
I can speak administratively. It just seems to me that the Assembly knows better than me on a lot of this, how much it takes to actually change municipal law and state law. A lot of times it has to start at the state level and then trickles to municipal for something that would have very little to no impact on the amount of work that we do. Rather, we take, and I'm just using this as an example because personal property is hard to define, but rather we take a wallet and glasses and leave a toothbrush. It doesn't change the workload of taking the wallet and the glasses and the toothbrush. It'd be a lot of work changing that code, and it's not like we're talking about pounds different than what would be seized. It's the bulk of. I don't think the amount of work that would go into changing that code is really going to make that much difference on the amount of work that's saved. It's just not gonna. Personal property is hard to define. We always got to err on the side of caution, and so then we're gonna be logging in evidence, and it just logging in evidence or logging in property takes an enormous amount of time. Whether it's 10 items or rather it's 13 items.
If I may answer this.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay. The issue is not what is personal property. The issue is what personal property the municipality must store and protect when it abates the camp. Okay? Right now, we have a definition in our code that says what that personal property is that must be stored. Among that, it is a very nebulous definition, but among that is generators. Under the current definition, that would also include the 100-pound propane tanks and the 25 other 20-pound propane tanks that I have personally seen in many of the camps. Okay, not a wallet, not a toothbrush. That's the definition given by the court in case law that guides what personal property must be stored in order to abate the camp. That's what the community must protect. The wallet, the metal, the Purple Heart medal, the toothbrush, the sleeping bag, but it does not have to protect, should not have to protect, the entire collection of materials that someone brings onto public property in order to set up a near permanent encampment. That is quite fixable in law. If you would like me to do it, I would happily draft the law change for that to occur. My wife and I could easily do that for you had we had the opportunity of a response from the chairman of this committee to my inquiry about how he wished to handle this particular discussion. I would have brought that draft proposal to this committee for discussion today.
And when you look at most of the stuff that is in these camps, encampments, a pile of 15 or 20 bike parts, you know, is that personal property? I don't think so.
In the statute, in the ordinance, bikes aren't even listed, okay? No. You have an ordinance and it has A through O on here. And the lawsuit, the ACL lawsuit, the court outlined the kind of personal property that is important to store. It's those things that are closely attended to people who are camping, nomadic movement, not generators, huge propane tanks as big as cars, and that sort of thing. You can change that.
We have gone way beyond in our construction of the city ordinance, way beyond in our definition of what personal property we are required to store, way beyond what the court would require us to do. It's easily fixable.
All right. Thank you. I have a list here. Mr. Gates.
One clarification. The court decision from Judge Widner, it didn't create a list. he discussed different types of property.
That's correct.
He discussed previous cases.
Have a certain list of specific items that we enacted afterwards. And this list is to help differentiate with what's junk and can be thrown away as waste after a 72-hour posted notice. And it's not exclusive. Generators are still going to be, I think, not junk and not waste that can dispose of after 72 hours regardless. If we do so, that's a takings. That's what we're trying to avoid. After 10 days, used to be 15, everything can be disposed of. Anything on this list can be thrown away as junk and waste. That's the legal position. So we can change this list. It doesn't change. No.
Let me read the case law cited by the court.
Yeah. All right. So I'm just going to keep going down the list, but it is a good start to the discussion. Yes, I have her next after you. Mr. Whittleton. You want back on?
Yeah. I'll wait till after John.
Sure.
Okay, well, jump around. I think this is real valuable, so it sets a stage for the stuff we'll see in a couple of weeks, so appreciate that. So, a couple on 9, enforce existing code prohibitions on open burns. I mean, we're not allowed to have open fires in Anchorage. It's pretty darn clear. Where's the legal opinion needed on that? If they got a fire, you tell them no fire, period. We can't burn brush in the hillside.
It's illegal.
You know, so I mean, that seems pretty easy. I mean, you see burnt trees in the parks now.
Well, your difficulty here is you may remember from some other previous meetings where your fire chief came in and said, basically, we don't enforce. What we do is we go and put a fire out. But if there are grills or there are open things that they can redo the fire in 5 minutes, we're not doing anything about that. And police do not enforce fire stuff. And so you have a interagency problem there.
Right, so I understand that. So to me, this is something we can do. I don't know why we need a legal opinion. We just need to have someone do it. And then on 11, I may have misunderstood, but publishing routine and complete reports. Did you say something you were worried about providing the identity of people? Is that part of the
There's a
stumbling?
question, and there's been an ongoing discussion about reporting camps that are open versus those that are closed. And so that's the place where there is a concern if it's an open camp, that if a map was published on the website, then people would be able to use it to target campers out of the community.
Okay.
Because we don't know where they are now.
Right. And we can go into one of those campsites now. I feel this is a ridiculous argument.
Insulting to
It's
the public.
insulting to the public. Totally insulting to the public, Nancy. Totally. And you can tell the mayor that.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Did you have any further questions?
Yeah, I was again looking up the Latin phrase that me and Mr. Gates keep coming up on, the list, the inclusive versus exclusive list. You list things, it doesn't exclude the existence of other things. Anyway, I was curious about number 10 because I guess I hadn't realized we were so far down that road that we were already considering sites for storage. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about perhaps what sites are being looked at. And I also want to urge us as we go forward to, and I'm sure you're doing this, but just to make sure, you know, the site has to be accessible to the people whose property we are taking. So it either needs to be relatively close to where it's taken, or at least on I'd say probably a bus route where people can get to it. So I just want to hear a little more discussion on point 10.
It's like we don't actually have a site identified yet. However, being on a bus route and being available is a key. So we have reached as far as to decide we will have a phone number that will be available at the posting that the person can call and then make an appointment or have set hours for pickup for those items. And so we're trying to do the work about, you know, what location around town would be on a bus line, you know, the selection criteria is what we'll be using for that.
Mr. Chair, I just would add that that's a conversation for another day when it's more fully vetted and ready for public. And it is something that's being thoughtfully contemplated. And so just stay tuned is my request.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dunbar. Thank you, Mr. Constant. I'll add you to our list, Mr. Perman. All right, looks like we have Ms. Anderegg, then Mr. Trainee.
I'm from the Campbell Park Community Council Homeless Committee. And for one thing, I'm in an area where I'm seeing the bark beetles have hit really hard. And the fire hazard behind our houses is even worse than I've ever seen it be as the trees start to die off. So 8 and 9 are of real concern to me. Another real concern I have is about the strategic 2014 plan that's going out for review. And we've been told we are going to have a month to do this. And I have been coming to meetings, and I'm out of town a lot, but I try to come. And when I came in June, this was supposed to be discussed. Then it was supposed to be discussed in July. Then it was supposed to be discussed today. Now it's going to be discussed in 2 weeks. I'm assuming these are changes that are going to go into the strategic 2014 plan that's going out for review, and we're only going to have 30 days if we have that many. And I know that my community council has a resolution standard whereby we have to present something at one meeting and we cannot adopt.
Let's go ahead and just get this meeting back to order, make sure our P's and Q's are in line, and then if people trickle in, they'll do that. So, Mr. Trainee, you are next on the queue.
Nancy, you kept talking about all these items and costs associated with it. I need to know what that works into actual dollars. As we start the budget cycle, we're going to have to provide dollars. So as you come up and say this needs money, just let us know what you're talking about. It may be too early, but we need to start planning now for this year's budget, put it together. It's going to be a tight budget. Thank you, ma'am.
Mayor, if I
Sure.
can just respond, the direction on this has been somewhat unclear. I've not seen a process like this, and I haven't been staffing this committee, as long as maybe some others, but the recommendations came into the committee. There's material here that we think is very valuable, and some things that we may not consider or we may decide we can't afford. But there's no process for it. It has been kind of cycling around, like, how do we handle this? And so I guess what I would ask from the committee is clarification on, are you asking the administration to provide cost estimates on enacting all of these? Are you asking for an assessment of, things we think are feasible, or, if I could have additional clarification on what the Assembly is interested in? From the administration's perspective, we feel moving to the zone ordinance will likely consume a lot of the available time and resource, and so this is also not just a resource question about storage. It's about bodies who can head up processes like this, who can respond. It's also, for me, a question of, how are we using our commissions? There's a hand commission. There are bodies that are to make recommendations to the Assembly and to help vet community information, so that we know how to prioritize on our end, and things do have to be prioritized for me because I've got a lot on my plate. So I guess I'm looking for clarification from the committee on what exactly you're asking for information from.
So I'll get to you in a second. So my initial thoughts would be this, Ms. Burke, that we should move forward and get all of the information that we need to have a robust debate on all of these 12 points. So, assume that we will be moving forward on all of these and get us the information that we need. And then after the meeting on the 30th, perhaps we will be able to parse out further some of the things which we absolutely can do, some of the things where we're working towards, and some of the things where it's maybe a little bit iffy. And at that point, like we do with a variety of other commissions that take recommendations, we can task the Hand Commission with really looking at these in much further detail and giving us recommendations. Because I think you are right in that the amount of, for some of these, and I think it's just a few that I've written down that look like they need some more intense scrutiny, perhaps this body isn't the right one to handle that scrutiny.
I think the only other thing with that is, let's make sure the Hand Commission is fully staffed.
Yeah.
Because I've been told by people on the commission, they don't have enough people show up to have a quorum.
Right.
So this goes to administration.
Yes, thanks.
you guys need to make sure the hand commission that needs to be utilized is actually staffed. Because I'm getting complaints from people on it. Administration is not staffing the hand commission.
So if that is a process that this body would like to move forward with, could you give us a little bit more report on how the hand commission is doing on the 30th? Because I don't want to push this to a body that won't be able to actually get it done.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there's some opportunities for bringing that group up to a higher level and making some more connections with the community.
So just to clarify, the Assembly is requesting that the administration provide information on what it would take to enact all of these 12 points that have been submitted by citizens to the committee. And then I would add, probably from the administration's perspective, what we would do is provide information back about prioritizations for how to balance. This camp cleanup process is the beginning of the whole other continuum of things that need to happen. And if we load up resource in the upfront process, it could take away from some of the activities that we're doing to solve these problems. And so we would also provide that analysis to the committee as well.
Absolutely. Okay, Mr. Permit isn't here, so actually you, sir, and then you, ma'am.
I'm Brian Silva with the community, Campbell Park Community Council Committee on Homelessness. What Nancy Burke said before the alarm about using the number 3 item on the recommended 12, and that is to hire a code enforcement officer to monitor public spaces and identify illegal camps. She was saying that they like the idea of having someone go out into the camps, but wanted to make it a social work function. I think that would be ill-advised and extremely time-consuming. But I'm a person who has reported many camps, and I know that the system right now depends on people like me, that citizens, to report illegal camps. There is no one from the municipality who is actually responsible to go out and identify and report on camps or to follow up to see that they are removed. It is admittedly dangerous, and I'm growing concerned about my own safety in identifying these camps. As time goes on, the campers are more and more belligerent. I believe that if they start to identify someone as involved in the process of making them move, they will become more belligerent towards that person. I don't confront anyone, and I avoid any contact, but I like to strike out through the woods, like a number of people in the city. And so I find these camps, and when I do, I try to locate them on the municipal map and report them. It's not a good situation to depend on the whole system, for the whole system to depend on private people like me as the first step. The city needs to have someone who will go out and find the camps, locate them for the city processes, and then follow up to see that they are removed or they're not reoccupied. It's not appropriate to depend on me and people like me to do this dangerous work. And I object to being placed in that situation. I know that the volume of trash is increasing. The number of camps that are being reported is, or at least abated, is increasing. The problem seems to be getting worse. We need to make some allowance for this.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay, my name is Linda Chase. By the way, what we have here is the the administration and Nancy are focused on one aspect of this situation. Gotta help the people. I'm someone who wants to help the people as well. But laws have not been enforced from the beginning. And what we have now is we have a crisis. And I don't think the administration is accepting what is going on. You just heard what Brian said. We have people from all over the city who are very nervous, who don't enjoy going on the bike trails like they used to. And until the assembly and the administration realize this is a critical problem that needs to be addressed now. Everything has been pushed off just a little bit later, pushed down. So, you know, we're heading into fall and winter's right on top of that. And what has been done about it? I question. Even the Parks and Rec going in without enough people. That, to clean up, that has to be changed. That's a ridiculous situation. There aren't enough people to clean up these encampments. There needs to be some kind of enforcement, just like Brian was saying about not expecting citizens to do the job that we pay, and we pay nicely, our city government. And this is coming to a crisis with this community. And if the administration does not accept that, does not start funding an effort to take care of this, they're ignoring most of the population, totally ignoring most of the population. And I was wondering, when did this little storyboard get made? Was it yesterday? This morning? I'd say that's about when it was done.
Thank you. Ms. Elza.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a few things, and maybe Josh can clarify as well. There are a total of 10 workers dedicated through the Parks and Rec department to clean. There is also the CWS crew that cleans as well, that we can have up to about 5 people. That'll make 15 people clean, okay? Just to kind of, so that you know there's more than 10 people
No,
clean.
you're mistaken, because there are lots of times those people don't want to do it. They're on public service. And secondly, in speaking with John Rada and other people at the Parks and Recreation Department, you know, maybe 1 or 2 people. Don't tell us that it's 15 people. It is not. I want to see it written out. I want to see what Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, since last April, written out. How many people did they have working on a crew 6 days a week? We didn't get to hire the supervisor until when was it? Middle of, it was at the end of June or the beginning of July, because we couldn't seem to be able to interview and get someone in place. It took that long. What this does is slaps the community in the face. This administration is slapping us in the face. We're not funding this problem, and by stonewalling us, not letting us participate. Today was so ridiculous. Oh, I can't wait to tell the newspaper about this and the TV station. I think that every one of you, Mr. Rivera, Nancy, the mayor, should respond publicly about what happened today. I'll see if I can make that happen.
Thank you. I think Ms. Brick, you wanted to say something? Okay. All right. So, sure, final comment.
This is Russ Webb. I'm a resident of South Edition. The author of one of the key issues, and I think we hear it expressed and have heard it expressed, as I have repeatedly by citizens around our community, is a concern about the illegal camps and the associated crime emanating from those camps. We have a disconnect, frankly, I think, between the citizens and the mayor's office, certainly. Perhaps it's philosophical, it's not clear. The mayor's office is focused on solving the problem of homelessness, and the issue of illegal camping is viewed as a problem attendant to homelessness. There's a perception, Nancy and the mayor have expressed it directly to me, that there is no such thing as a person who is choosing to live in a camp not because they have no alternatives, but because that is a choice. The belief that there is the only people who are camping are those who are disabled or disadvantaged and have no other alternative. That is not what those of us who are out in the camps on a regular basis see all the time. We need a solution to the illegal camping problem and also to homelessness. They are related, but they are not precisely the same. The long-term focus, the single strategy focus on a HUD strategy for permanent housing is necessary. It is not sufficient. Other approaches must be taken if we will solve this problem. I appreciate that Nancy is focused on that. I'm glad she's there. I was on the Mental Health Trust when we made the decision to give the community the money for her position. I want that to succeed. I want her to succeed. I want the mayor to succeed. But I want this community to solve what I believe is now defined by the community as the single biggest problem affecting our businesses and our citizens.
Not to mention health, all of the health issues, safety.
Yeah, and I just want to finish up by saying a couple of things. One, I have worked in government for 35 years. I have been an advocate for and directed state agencies in our state serving people with mental illness, developmental disabilities, addictions, children who've been abused and neglected, and other people harmed by trauma. I am not a person who doesn't care about and have compassion for and work pretty much every damn day of my life on behalf of those people, including family members of mine. I resent having been characterized as someone who's worrying about NIMBY and other things. That is not the issue for me. I want people who need help to get it, and I want us to be smart about it. I also want our community to be smart about the other aspects of other problems, crime, and occupation of our public spaces by people who are doing it simply because it's convenient and their choice. In my 35 years in government, I've worked pretty much at every level, from field to the Deputy Commissioner of Health and Social Services. I've worked with the legislature for many years. I will say this about the process that I saw play out around this particular meeting and around how the 12-point plan was dealt with by the mayor's office and, frankly, Mr. Chairman, by you. It was among the worst aspects or worst examples of how government operates that I have seen. Not the most egregious, because I've seen very egregious ways, but hiding the ball, keeping citizens from having knowledge, waiting until the last damn moment to spring on the citizens who are making a good faith proposal to try to make a difference in this community, and allowing the administration to put together its information and then spring it on on the citizens with no copies available in advance, without being required to state a position on something, it's one of the most egregious examples of bad government that I have ever seen, and I've seen a lot.
All right.
It might be time for a couple of people in this room to think about another career.
Thank you, Mr. Webb.
Chair, may I ask that the demeanor that's provided to assembly members be provided to all staff as well in meetings?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Burke. That's a good point. All right. Actually, we do need to, very, very quick, and then we do need to adjourn.
I just wanted to say that these 12-point plan is talking about human beings in a way that is very, very dehumanizing. And I feel real frightened and upset a little bit about all this written down. So look for a response from me. And I'm hoping to bring other people from the community into the room, because I see 3 people who repeatedly, the same voices over and over. And whereas the rest of the community, probably busy trying to keep their house together, trying to help their job together, and taking care of their own stuff. Yes, there is some health issues, and the biggest health issues are people who are not getting enough sleep, that don't have enough other people to talk to, and have enough cultural connection here in Anchorage. And there is a big, huge problem, and the 12-point plan is only meeting one segment of the population. And so it will fail if we implement all those things on this here. That's all I wanted to say. I'm just upset. Just remember, these are human beings, and it sounds like we're talking about trash.
Mr. Lang,
Very upsetting.
you cannot lecture me on compassion.
Mr. Chair, maybe can you
Yes, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and adjourn this meeting.